the business. And you might feel that much more strongly than a family member who is over here. Now, if we look ultimately at those of you who are either in family businesses or will be in family businesses, and we fast forward 20 or 30 years, where are you most likely to be in this three-circle model? Don't all speak at once. For the sake of argument, you're most likely to be here, right? You'll be in leadership positions or board positions that will have strategic overview of these businesses. You'll have to be paying attention to what's going on in all 7 of these constituencies. You will have to play a balancing act. How many of you are studying marketing or have studied marketing? So in the simplest form, none of the media people who are in advertising didn't raise their hands. Oh my God. In the simplest terms, it is a marketing job. You need intelligence about what's going on in the system to be able to lead it and manage it well. Do you think that it is unfair for a family owner to be thinking about dividends and wishing that they could get what might be their fair share? Do you think it's unfair that a non-family executive who has contributed substantially to this success in a very successful year would like their share?
Actually, he's taking bonus there, so how can we say that really he's not taking fair share?
He may be taking bonus, but I think the question here is, what's the size of the bonus? If the dividend is bigger because it is a one-time bonanza for the business owning family, it might diminish bonus available to that person. The basic point is that you need to start preparing yourself, if you're not already in leadership roles in your family business, to start thinking about where you are in the three-circle model, where other family members and non-family members are, and what they're thinking. It's not illegitimate to have a point of view or a perspective about what your interests are in a system like this, in any political and human and business system. For the people who are owners and leaders of systems like this, knowing where people are, what they're thinking, and being able to balance and negotiate with them about their legitimate interests is critically important. And it puts enormous pressure on you. Now, this is just talking about the basic system. We're going to go on to additional slides that are going to talk about the trends that you have to deal with within just the family over time. Okay, let's talk about the strengths of family businesses. We were just, in the introduction, you were told that family business is the dominant form of business in India. Worldwide, what is the average percentage, region by region, of family businesses in the total economies of those regions? Who wants to hazard a guess? Is it more than 50%?
Around 60%?
It's over 70. Who wants to hazard a guess about the percentage of family-owned or controlled businesses that in the Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 are family owned or family controlled?
90%.
It's actually closer to about 60%. Family businesses, in spite of what a number of faculty members think at the University of Chicago, at Northwestern, at Stanford, at Harvard, at Wharton, are not only a dominant form of business, but often the most successful industry by industry. Academics tend to think of family businesses as a second-order form of life, but they have critically important lessons to teach all of us. I'm going to go back one slide for a second. Why is there this big circle out here? Who's in that? What kind of family businesses would have that kind of bubble for non-family, non-manager owners?
Listed companies. Listed companies.
Yes, exactly. When I said family controlled, it means Ford Motor Company, Rogers Communications. It is a publicly listed company where the controlling shareholders are the family members, but you have many thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, of non-family shareholders. So the strengths, the high-performing family business systems that we see have a mission of excellence, ethics, and family control and influence in the business. They care about the businesses. Even if you look at Thomson Reuters, where the family has decided in the third generation that nobody in the third generation, fourth, fifth, will be actively involved in leadership in the business. They are exceptionally active at the board level. They are obsessed with control and influencing strategic direction of the company and the non-family executives who are leading it. There is strong stakeholder loyalty, responsiveness to those stakeholders. They care about customers and have long-term relationship with them. They care about employees and other owners. There is a pride and passion, sense of duty, persistence and resilience that family businesses have that you often don't find in other businesses. Boldness and decisiveness. Stable ownership group and business leadership. Let's talk about this one just for a second. We'll come to it. There is a flip side to this slide, which is the weaknesses of family business systems. And you'll see that in some cases, they're almost mirror images of the strengths. Stable ownership group and business leadership. What is the average tenure of a publicly traded company that's broadly owned? So you look at the standard public company around the world. What is the average tenure of the CEO at this point in time? Guess.
5 years.
20. You've been spending too much time in family businesses. 5 to 6. 5 to 6. Smart use of money. Long-term patient perspective. Opportunity to transform the business when possible or needed. They see these opportunities and they take them. Marriott has been in and out of 9 different businesses over the course of the lifetime of the company. Willingness to challenge the status quo and existing business models. Continuous focus on talent development, succession and transition planning. In these companies, how long do they think that succession and transition takes? What is their time horizon for thinking about you as next generation leaders in their family business? Some of them think about it from birth. And more frequently, they talk about it when we ask them. They talk about it as being at least 10 and more like 15 years that they really focus on coaching and mentoring you and partnering with you to make sure that you will be successful. And they don't have an obsessive need. The senior leaders do not have an obsessive need to lead forever. But there are some flies in the ointment here. And there is a tradition of senior and next generation partnering. Okay, the vulnerabilities that we have seen in underperforming family business systems. Control mania, leading to unwillingness to get capital from outside as opposed to internally funding growth. So inadequate capital and a panic about allocating the capital that is available. Operations congestion and secrecy driven by senior generations. Strong, sometimes irreversible loyalties to products, technologies, and locations. An inability to break away from what I or we or our grandfather created. Can you think of an example in the US, in the automotive industry, if this happened?
Ford.
Why do you say Ford?
Because I think when they started producing cars, they said you can have any car but with the color black. And at one point in time, the owner got so possessive, or he grew so old that it was in a way his caretaker who used to kind of call the shots, or got so influenced that he never used to listen to his son, but used to listen more to the caretaker.
And then when he did listen to his son came up with the Edsel. If you look at the value creation path of the Ford Foundation that was created in the late 1930s, the growth curve goes like this. If you look at the value creation curve, now Ford Motor Company is having a renaissance, which is wonderful. But one of the dilemmas that the family has had is that they are still waiting for the second coming of Henry Ford I. They cannot imagine the notion that the blue oval will ever disappear. And value creation in Ford Motor Company is a tribute to the erosion of billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars, of the family's net worth over the last 70 years. There's also, in families that begin to underperform, a panic. They either sometimes have incredibly disruptive family conflict. In the US, there is a very large convenience store chain called Cumberland Farms, where there are 7 siblings in the second generation. We were once told by a lawyer who worked with the family that if those 7 siblings stopped suing each other, it would rain lawyers on the East Coast of the United States for 40 days and 40 nights, because they were spending so much time and money fighting with each other. And this, my friends, is a $4 billion company. So it's not to say that disruptive conflict can totally get in your way, but think about what would have happened if that family had been able to work through their conflicts. How much larger would they be? And how much less of a regional company versus a national company would they be? The flip side of this is exaggerated fear of conflict, which we see in underperforming family businesses as well. Underperforming family businesses panic about conflict and avoid it at all costs. The family businesses that we see that are successful are ones that learn how to fight. They learn how to argue about the right issues in the right way. They don't avoid conflict, but they don't destroy themselves with conflict. There is a supermarket chain in the US that basically has come apart at the seams and all value has been destroyed. If any of you lived on the East Coast of the United States, particularly in New England, the DeMula family had a close to $1 billion supermarket business, which was destroyed by the family not being able to stop fighting with each other about who was going to control the business. We've seen this in Brazil, in Mexico. We've seen it in Southeast Asia. It's a tragedy when this happens. Weak or lack of performance mentality. It is fairly typical in many businesses that human resources management is not the strongest functional area in a company. In family businesses, it often is one of the weakest areas, sadly. Why do you think that's true?
Lack of trust.
I think part of it is lack of trust, but part of it is also when you start out, you're often evaluating family members, right? So if you're brothers and you've got to evaluate each other, how hard is that? If there is a human resources executive who's got to evaluate an up-and-coming family member, how hard is that? In the US, there is a family business, financial services that you've all heard of called Fidelity Investments. Abby Johnson is the successor in that business. She has never worked any place outside of Fidelity. She's Ned Johnson's daughter. If her human resources person goes into her and says, I'm going to do your annual review, how do you give a totally straight performance review to a billionaire who's going to be your boss or may actually be your boss now? It's difficult, and it's something that you have to fight against. Having performance measurement systems, giving people targets, even when they're young working in the business. It's something that ought to happen for every employee. It certainly should happen for family members. Otherwise, how do you get the kind of feedback that you need to fully develop your potential as an executive and a potential leader in the family business? Difficulty attracting and developing and retaining top family and non-family talent. Why?
Because on that time that the personal intentions are much more higher than the company's interest, we can say. Due to the, in the case of the fraternity or another more things, they are not able to justify or they are not able to just make a decision on behalf of, because they feel that really these are the my areas, I have to walk upon that one. But the company's demand is much more far than that.
And there are many people who look at, there is a program at Harvard Business School called the Unprecedented Management Program. It attracts young entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs who are working in family businesses. There is a split in each program of about 200 people. And these are students who are attracted from around the world. So from India, from China, from Southeast Asia, from Latin America. The split is, I would rather not work in my family business. I'd rather go out and prove myself, create something on my own, because I don't want to deal with the family politics. It's too crazy. And it's typically these underperforming family business systems that lead to somebody saying, I don't want to do this. It's going to be a death trap for me and my career. And there are others who say, I love my family, I love the family business, but it does not have a performance mentality. And if I go in, I'm just going to hamstring my career. So it's difficult attracting non-family executive talent because they see that family members are going to get special preference and special treatment. And they say, I'd rather go someplace else. There can be indecision, strategic stagnation, inappropriate or inadequate reinvestment due to dividend drain and lack of growth capital. Portfolio debt values tend to average down over time. And then finally, long leadership tenure. So, in good and underperforming family businesses overall, what is the average leadership tenure for a CEO?
30 years.
Close. 25. Too long or too short? Which is better, 6 or 25?
25.
Somebody said 25. Why 25?
Because he knows business better.
He does know but that's a whole generation, right?
Yeah.
So 25 is a whole generation. What is the risk of 25?
Outdated.
Second.
Outdated.
You can't accept change.
Can't accept change, and you also start to block the next generation for being able to take on important positions in the company and to begin to train to be leaders and top executives themselves. And this is the most important one, I think, which is that in these types of systems, we see that people have a narcissistic need to be in those leadership roles. They constantly say, in the work that we do with family businesses who are in this state, we don't see a fire in the belly in the next generation. I don't know if they can ever fill my shoes. It's a recipe for disaster. And it has a corrosive effect on the next generation because they feel diminished and demotivated. And most frequently, they're totally wrong about the capabilities of the next generation. In every MBA class we see, in this group here, at the lunch we had earlier, what we see young family members who want to go into their family businesses is a fear about whether I'm going to be good enough. But it is not paralyzing. It is a motivator saying, I want to excel. I want to be at least as good as the senior generation, or I even want to be better. But if you're told you're never going to be as good as I am, it kills your ability to do that, I think, and my colleagues think. Okay, here are the two slides I've really come to hate. I've used them for a great deal of my career. If you start with 100 family owner-controlled businesses in the first generation, by the time you get to the second generation, you have just over 25. By the time you get to the fourth generation, you have about 10 to 12%. Okay? Family business academics, family business advisors show every student who's interested in family business or clients that they're working with this slide. Why do I hate it? If you're not a family business, are your odds better or worse than this? Your odds are better. Sorry. If you're not a family business, your odds are worse than this. You get to 0%. The fact is that about 90% of non-family businesses fail within 5 years. So I begin to feel guilty that we ever showed this slide in the first place, because I think one of the things that it does is paralyze people with anxiety. The fact is, your chances are very good of succeeding in your family business. Honestly, very good. Because they have inherently incredible strengths. They have talent, they have people who in their DNA understand the business, understand the dynamics, understand the family employees and customers. They have huge competitive advantages. They have risks, but they have huge competitive advantages. Next slide. All right, you heard this earlier. The 3-generation rule. And I'm sure there is an Indian equivalent, and I apologize for not having it up there. What is the Indian equivalent? Maybe there isn't one. You spared yourself this anguish.
So you can give us your number, we'll get back to you.
Why do I not like this slide any longer?
And the decline of the family businesses.
I worry that it allows the senior generation to feel that the next generation is going to screw it up. It seems like a prognosis. How many of you are 3rd generation in your family business, or will be 3rd generation in your family business? Do you hate seeing this? Because you don't believe it. If I were you, I would hate seeing it. Because I really would feel that it's the senior generation and it's the world saying, the prognosis is you're not going to be good enough and you're not going to make it. And I often feel now that the real root of the problem is the senior generation, not the 3rd generation, 2nd or 3rd generation. It is the senior generation's belief that the success formula that they came up with is immutably correct, and that our success formula, the single industry or single industries that we're in, are the ones that we have to stay in. And we can't change the business model, is part of what leads to this kind of problem. That by 3rd or 4th generation, family businesses have started to tail off because they're not willing to be challenged about the business model. They're not willing to challenge themselves about the momentum versus a real growth strategy for the business. So the note of caution, when you review those slides, think twice about whether they're worth using in your own family business when you're talking to people in the next generation or to the senior generation. Because there is a built-in assumption, I believe, to blame the younger generation for the lack of success that some family businesses have, and avoid the assumption and temptation to protect the business from younger generation rather than work with them, plan for succession, and partner with the next generation. So what do we see in trends of dynastic family business systems? And when we say dynastic, we mean family business systems that last for multiple generations. The Antoniores, for instance. How many of you know the Italian family of the Antoniores? How many of you like wine or olive oil? They make both. They have been in business as a single family for 27 generations. You can do it. The Mogis. How many of you use Kikkoman soy sauce? Or have heard of Kikkoman soy sauce? The Mogis have been in business for 14 generations. There are businesses that do well, and they understand that over time, moving from the founding generation to second to third to fourth to fifth, the business size and complexity grow and become more complicated. Sorry, you beat me to the punch on that one. The risk here is that increased size and complexity also means increased success. And that it's possible for members of the next generation to come in at a relatively high level into the business, and it buffers the family from the street. There is more money to go around. We're not fighting every day to put food on the table. The business is throwing off cash. There is free cash flow in a way that there wasn't in earlier generations. But what we see in businesses that handle it right is that the family stays connected to the street. The CP group in Thailand requires that every member of the next generation who wants to go into the group as a manager or executive does what? What are they required to do? Does anybody know this?
Start from the floor level.
Well, they start from the floor level in a very, very good answer. They start from the floor level in a very interesting way. They are required to start their own businesses. If you don't start your own business, if you don't have some success in that business, which may become a part of the family portfolio, you cannot get a job in the family business. Now, it's not the end of the world if you don't go out and start your own business. You can be a shareholder, but you do not get a job in the family business. There is another business. We call these the Barcelona rules. Engineering-based manufacturing business in Barcelona, Spain. Moving from now the fourth to the fifth generation, there are three cousins, engineers by training, one of them's an MBA, who set up rules for family employment. And the rules are, you can apply once to come into the family business. Once. You can only apply after you're age 26. You have to have an undergraduate degree with honors in business or engineering. You have to have a master's degree with distinction in engineering or business. You have to work for 3 to 5 years outside the family business in a management position. You have to have 3 promotions and be in good standing and ready for the next promotion. You have to speak 3 languages in addition to Spanish fluently. When we first, anybody want to volunteer for? So when we first heard these rules, we started laughing. And I said, you know, nobody can do that by the time they're 26. And these 3 cousins started laughing back at us, and they said, that's the point. That's the point. We want people who are in their mid-30s. We know that there's a risk that the success of our business has been so substantial. We're operating in 5 different countries. We're a business that's $20 billion. The family could come into the business and feel our name's above the door, we're protected. It's high risk. We want the best and the brightest in the business, So we're going to set a very high bar. It also protects us from parents in the family in our generation who say, I've got a very bright son or daughter, they want a job. We can say, these are the rules. And what the rules do is connect people. When we say the street, we mean to the real world. As you move from founding to second to third to fourth, fifth generation, family size and complexity become significantly more substantial. The family runs the tendency of becoming fragmented and unaligned. Why?
Fragmented is required because you have said that really the business is complex. If the persons or the business family has been distributed their business, then they are being capable to do their business in a own way. As for example, I just say take the examples of Hinduja brothers. They have distributed their business, and some of the brothers have taken the portion of the IB, and some of the persons have taken the business of Ashok Leyland like person. So we can say this is a great idea through which we can not make a complex, make easy the complexity. Thank you.
It often happens in both Pakistan and India. We've seen something that happens fairly frequently with regard to family size and complexity. One of the things that people start to do is create separate businesses for individual branches or individuals within a family. We don't believe that that changes complexity or the risk of fragmentation and non-alignment in the family. You can make the argument, and we do, that it is a huge mistake to silo the businesses. It's essentially what families in this region are anticipating, is that there will inevitably be family conflict, and we can easily divide the assets so that people can have their own business and they won't have to deal with these issues that other successful family businesses that stay in business and build their portfolios together and create more wealth and value can have. Now, there may sometimes be advantages to doing that kind of fragmentation. But there are other ways of doing it. How many of you know Bacardi? Or know the name?
Yeah.
How many shareholders are there in the Bacardi family? More than 500. Those are just the family shareholders, right? So what does that mean about, just guess, how many, if you include spouses, how many family members are there? Almost 1,000. But they have one of the most successful businesses in the world. So how do they do that? They work very hard. You're not going to be able to change family size and complexity, but you can manage the unity of purpose. You can make sure that you have structure and process for family governance, for shareholder governance, for corporate governance that links family members together, that creates rules and guidelines, that talks about standards for behavior. How are we going to treat each other as family members, as shareholders, within the business? How are we going to bring these 1,000 people together periodically to be able to share information about our core mission as a business family and our vision for the future? How are we going to talk about the fact that as a business family, we want to use some of these assets to make sure that we give members of each generation the best possible education that they can get, that we want to develop their talent, whether they want to come into the family business or not, that we're going to give them leadership roles in family governance and shareholder governance and possibly in the business. But if they're not interested in the business, there are other places within, and I'm not going to refer to the family enterprise, for instance, philanthropy, where they can contribute and contribute in very substantial ways. There is a risk. Every member of the senior generation panics about this. I'm about to tell you a story about the Philippines. Over time, there is a desire within the family for wealth, comfort, and status. These begin to become a raison d'etre. The family wealth buffers the family from the street. And people begin to think that part of the reason that we're here is we deserve to be wealthy. And having brand name clothes and brand name cars is a right of being part of this family business. That money essentially grows on trees. There are families that deal with this extraordinarily well. And when they manage it, they remain lower priorities. If you look at the Johann Pater family, which has the 14th largest steel company in the world, based in Brazil, joint venture in India, joint venture in China, steel company in Spain, Mexico, Chile, 7 steel companies in North America. What would you guess the CEO drives? What's his car? It's a 10-year-old Chevrolet. The company literally makes a point, and the family makes a point of saying, we don't have to have a BMW. We don't have to have a Mercedes. Now, a lot of them live in Brazil, and in Brazil, because one of the real growth industries, in spite of the boom in Brazil, is kidnapping. Driving a modest car that's 10 years old has some distinct advantages. And not having a driver has some distinct advantages. And some of these Chevrolets, which are very beat up, happen to be armor plated. But the fact is that there are families that work hard at saying, we're lucky, we're privileged, and we should enjoy what we have created. But we also need to stay attached to our roots. We need to root ourselves in some humility and a sense of where we came from. In the case of Gerdau, they started by making nails and office furniture. It was a very modest business. But it's now an $18 billion business that is enormously successful. Family unity over time around mission, business, and values goes down. If it's managed, you can keep it relatively high. Ideally, as advisors to family businesses, we want to see it go up. But a good target is to have it not descend as fast as it can as you become larger and more fragmented. Family industry. Often there's a regression towards the mean. Tends to go down over time. When managed, it goes up. How many of you believe this? Do you think that there is, as you go, sometime do a grid and just multiply out, take on the top line of a matrix, list out the number of people in each generation who are who are blood relatives in your family. On the second line, list out the number of spouses. And on the third line, so each column would be a generation, each row would be numbers of people. Go to, at the bottom, number of children that you expect to have in each generation. And you'll find how quickly you go from 2 people in the first generation to hundreds of people by the 4th or 5th generation. But a question is, do you believe that families over time, as you move to the 4th and 5th generation, that people on average in the family as a whole have a tendency to be somewhat less industrious than the first generation? There will be people in 3rd, 4th, 5th generation who will work very hard. But do you think on average there is a tendency for family industry to decline? No takers?
Sir, actually the main portion is there that from one generation to another the thought process should be changed, and it is required. And after the managing those industries, they are being capable. As for we take the example, my father is capable of in his own time, and I am capable of in this time. As same that is the thing that on that time the person is more capable than the father. But the baseline should be maintained for all the generation. Then the industry should be grow.
Good.
Rajesh, you can give me that mic. Hand it to someone else. Thank you so much.
So you may be the exception to the rule, or if you're the rule, I'm delighted. Over time, the sense of tradition and desire to be a part of the tradition and understanding that the family mission is to create things of value, not just wealth, but to create products and services that are valuable to customers in the community, that create employment opportunities for people who are non-family members who are working for you, that improves the lives of your employees and the communities in which you operate, that there is something beyond the business family that is important to serve. There is, yes, a connection to that tradition, but ideally what you want to do is manage it upwards so there is a very tight connection. And people understand the excitement, psychic connection, and the obligation to be supportive of the family businesses. Now this is one that's troubling. I'm not sure I'm going to ask you again. But there is, honestly, we believe, a tendency for the willingness to take risks to decline over time. Why have we seen that? You have people who are working in the family business in the 3rd, 4th, 5th generation who are very familiar with the business, with the market, with the competitors. But you may have, take for instance, Gilbane, which is a construction and real estate development company in the US that is about $4 billion. They have about 300 family shareholders who have been very patient for a long time, but they have 20 who are working in the business. For the 207 who are not working in the business, if the 30 who are working in the business come and say, we want to make $1 billion acquisition, what do you think the likely initial reaction will be on the part of the non-active shareholders?
They will say, please do not venture.
Don't do it. Give us a dividend. What is the dilemma with their being willing to take risks from their point of view?
balanced risk, they will not take a, they will weigh the risks involved in that.
They'd have to weigh the risks, absolutely. But one of the things they may have to do is forego dividends because the investment needs may be high enough so that dividends for some period of time literally would change. What you want to do is make sure that shareholders